Could Rex Ryan be in line to be the Miami Dolphins' next head coach if, in fact, they move off of Mike McDaniel? A recent report that discusses a lot of the internal going-ons and happenings in Miami. It was released yesterday, and it discussed that, so we're going to talk about that in depth. Also, what must Stephen Ross do and what lengths must he go to fix the current situation in Miami? Great article from Barry Jackson discusses that, and we will go over it in detail, plus a whole lot more. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and as always, let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score.
Field on the near side, man open. Touchdown!
The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown.
He's going deep. He's got it for the touchdown. He's in.
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan.
Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we're back here for another one. Do me a favor as you come through, please smash the like button. If you're new around here, go ahead and subscribe and hit that little notification bell so you are notified whenever we go live or drop a new video. Hope everyone enjoyed the film study that I dropped yesterday, but we got a lot more to talk about. We got to move on as we get ready for the Chargers this weekend. I will be live tomorrow with Neil Driscoll. Today, due to some obligations that I have, there is no finish line. All right. So, man, how is everyone doing? Even though it's only been about a little over 24 hours since we last reconvened on a live stream. Feels like a lot has happened. So, a number of things to discuss. All right. Number one, the Miami Dolphins, they actually worked out last night multiple cornerbacks. Miles purchased, Daquan Hardy, and obviously the person everyone is familiar with who was with us through the whole preseason and training camp, Ethan Robinson. They did make a decision on corner, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. Another interesting thing I think we should throw out there and maybe have a discussion about for a team that really, for a team that might need some wide receiver help right now, Treylon Burks is out there. The Titans have released former first-round pick Treylon Burks off IR. So, apparently Treylon Burks has received medical clearance. He's ready for a change of scenery. I mean, what do you got to lose right now? Treylon Burks is an interesting gadget player, especially with everything that Mike McDaniel likes to do. Like that would be an interesting option on the free agent market for me right now. Now, it's not like you're getting blazing 4.2 or 4.3 speed. He ran a 4.55. But you'd be getting a guy that you could probably use in gadget situations. And you're really actually getting a guy that, man, for a position you're so thin at, would it really hurt to add someone like Treylon Burks to the practice squad right now? I'm not even saying add him to the active roster. But, I mean, D. Eskridge was discarded by the Seattle Seahawks, and they went ahead and they brought him in, and that's pretty much worked out in terms of a depth piece. I think Treylon Burks is an interesting option. Remember, he's the guy the Titans traded away A.J. Brown for to draft. Remember that. So I don't know if you guys remember that whole wide receiver class too. A lot of people were high on Treylon Burks, including myself actually. And it just didn't work out under Vrabel, and it just hasn't worked out with the Titans. So Treylon Burke, I mean, that would be interesting. If you can just add him to the practice squad and see what you got, I mean, what does it hurt at this point? For a team that needs as much help as they can get, let's be honest. So I think that's an interesting name that's out there right now for sure. So Treylon Burks is someone that I would be looking into, considering what we do offensively in Miami. Going even further here, continuing with some, trade speculation. Apparently, Breece Hall, teams are currently circling Breece Hall right now, and the trade rumors are expected to heat up. The New York Jets are seem to be circled right now by the Los Angeles Chargers, who the Miami Dolphins are facing this weekend. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Houston Texans, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are all circling around Breece Hall right now. So we might have Breece Hall moved out of the division sooner rather than later. Imagine if the Chargers traded for him right before we played them. Wouldn't that just be so? That would be hilarious. That would be absolutely hilarious. Oh my God, that would be funny. But another interesting thing too, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I saw the video leaked out. Jonathan Gannon, the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, he was fined $100,000 by the team for a sideline altercation with backup running back who's now been, thrust into a starter role because of injuries to Benson and Connor. Amari DeMarcado. Jonathan Gannon walked up to him, got in his face, was yelling at him, and smacked his pads and everything. And he ended up getting a fine by $100,000. So the Arizona Cardinals are, and their ownership are more responsible to the on-field product and the perception of it than the Miami Dolphins are right now. That's all I came away saying. Oh, look, they're actually doing something because they didn't like how everything looks in terms of public perception. So, because remember, DeMarcado, he dropped the football before crossing the goal line Sunday. It would have been a 72-yard touchdown run. And Gannon lost his mind on the sidelines over it. Just absolutely went berserk. So, look, and there are people defending it. There are people saying he crossed the line. I don't know what was said. I don't know the whole situation. But, you obviously can't get physical, especially in the year of our Lord 2025, on the sidelines with a player. So, and, the Miami Dolphins are labeled as soft. What do you think some people are screaming the Arizona Cardinals are for fining Gannon? They're labeling them as soft, right? But I think what it comes down to is Gannon putting his hands on the running back. That was the tipping point for sure. For sure. Guys, smash that like button. Let's go. Get those likes up right now. All right? Smash, smash, smash. All right, let's get into things. And before we do, let's shout out today's sponsor. That, of course, would be Sleeper. Listen, do you think you know football? Then try to turn your football knowledge into real money with the Sleeper app, the ultimate fantasy sports app that can turn game day into payday. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less on your favorite players. With more stats than any other daily fantasy app, just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from the predicted stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money if your picks win. Use promo code Phinside, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions do apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. And also, as you see on the screen right now, Sleeper, they'll give you a free $20 with no deposit required. First-time users will also receive that 100% deposit match up to $100. But right now, go get your free $20 with no deposit required. All right? Shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this video. A lot to talk about, man. A lot to talk about. And a lot of this stuff is not going to have people in very good moods. Let's put it that way. All right? I tell you this, I know I discussed this a couple days ago about where this team might need to be with Stephen Ross in terms of moving on, but man, and I'll tell you this. Yeah, last night, what a painful night for me. What a painful night. Over the course of 72 hours, I had watched my favorite football team blow a 17-0 lead and lose to the Carolina Panthers. And then in a clinching Game 3, I watched my favorite baseball team, the Toronto Blue Jays, blow a 6-1 lead to the Yankees. And I really honestly don't think the Blue Jays are going to win the series now. I mean, we all know sports here. I mean, you go look at, 5 runs to end Game 2 unanswered, and then 8 runs unanswered yesterday by the Yankees. I've seen these type of collapses before. Holy jeez. I live in Toronto. My Penguins did win yesterday. They were between the Dolphins playing the Panthers and watching the Blue Jays against the Yankees, and then knowing the Penguins are so I tell you, nothing hurts more than sports, huh? Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we do this to ourselves? Beyond, why do we go through this year in and year out? I don't know. You tell me. Your answer might be as good as mine. It's tough to be a Dolphin fan. Let me tell you that much. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. I feel like, that's coming out a lot. So, now what's interesting too is, speaking with Mike McDaniel for a sec, I think you look at all the different, what's interesting is all the different NFL insiders. Jeremy Fowler was recently on Rich Eisen. We've had a couple people on Rich Eisen. We had Tom Pelissero talk about this as well. And they talk about how, Mike McDaniel's seat is a little hot. But right now, whether it's Pelissero or Fowler or whatever, it's we've had now multiple insiders say, well, Mike McDaniel's making it work with game planning around a quarterback that can't be hit. It really feels like there's a concerted effort here by some of the NFL insiders to set McDaniel up with the Tua excuse. I don't know if that's going to be the case when it's all said and done, but it sure sounds like that right now. So that's one thing I am noticing going on right now. But let's get into this because there is a lot to talk about. So, just last week or the week before, we had an article up here from Tony Pauline, who's a pretty plugged in NFL insider. I mean, especially come draft season, he's one of the people that's really locked into the pulse of the NFL and everything going on. And you know, he had an article a few weeks ago that was talking about how basically, you know, McDaniel had to get things turned around or it was going to get ugly real quick in season for him. You know, to talk about how there's being some patience practice, but only so much to a certain extent. So let's get into it. This is the latest article he has here. And what's interesting to me here is, I mean, there is like a lot to unpack here. There isn't just Rex Ryan. You know, Rex Ryan is discussed in this article, but there's a little bit more too. So check this out. So the article, insider notes on Dolphins, Mike McDaniel firing inches closer, ex-Jets head coach eyed as successor, and more. Less than a month ago on September 9th, after just 1 week into the NFL season, Tony Pauline wrote a lengthy article reporting that Mike McDaniel's tenure in Miami could be coming to a close sooner rather than later. Now, after a horrendous Week 5 loss to Carolina, sources tell me the end is in sight. After their Week 1 disaster when the Dolphins lost to the Indianapolis Colts by a score of 33-8, I reported that the league sources were telling me that owner Stephen Ross would pull the trigger and fire head coach Mike McDaniel if the team was not competitive over the next 6 to 7 games. Since that article, the Dolphins have lost 3 of 4 games, winning just a single contest over the lowly New York Jets last Monday evening. Tensions are starting to boil over after the loss to the Panthers, a game in which the Dolphins' offense combined for just 248 yards. McDaniel admitted during a press conference on Monday that owner Stephen Ross is really frustrated. The head coach went on to say, "It's frustrating because there's a lot of talking we need to major in doing. I don't think anybody wants to hear me talk about it as much as I don't feel like saying it, but it doesn't change the steadfast reality. That is, you have to be better at things or you'll continue having the same results." When could Mike McDaniel be sent packing? The same sources who told me that McDaniel was on very thin ice after their Week 1 loss to the Colts predict that Ross will wait 2 or 3 more games before deciding whether to pull the trigger on his head coach. If the team somehow makes a miraculous turnaround, McDaniel could save his job. The Dolphins face the Chargers, the Browns, and the Falcons during the next 3 weeks, then finish the month of October against the Baltimore Ravens. Many wonder if general manager Chris Grier will also be cut loose. Sources tell me that they do not think it's a definite that both the head coach and general manager would be fired at the same time. So right there, many wonder if general manager Chris Grier will also be cut loose. Sources tell Pauline that they do not think it's a definite that both the head coach and general manager would be fired at the same time. Now, which direction could Stephen Ross look to move if he unloads Mike McDaniel? Sources say they expect the owner to target a disciplinarian type of coach with experience in the league, someone in the Dan Quinn mold. One name that has been speculated as a possibility if Mike McDaniel gets canned is ESPN analyst Rex Ryan. Ryan's desire to prowl the sidelines on Sundays, potentially as a defensive coordinator, but preferably as a head coach, is well known in league circles. The hot rumor this past offseason was Ryan would return to the New York Jets before the franchise went with Aaron Glenn, partially on the advice of Bill Parcells. Ryan would fit the desire of hiring a veteran coach, though not necessarily a strict disciplinarian, and the Dolphins would be getting a proven winner, albeit from 15 years ago. Ryan led the Jets to consecutive AFC title game appearances in 2009 and 2010 before eventually being let go by the club after the 2014 season. Sources say that having a defensive-minded head coach would allow the Dolphins to bring in a big-name offensive coordinator who can work exclusively with Tua Tagovailoa, the 2020 first-round pick who at times has struggled with an injury and inconsistency since being drafted over 5 years ago. So there's a lot to unpack here. And a lot of it makes sense. All right, let's start off with Mike McDaniel being on thin ice and then, waiting in the next 2 or 3 games. I mean, what's the point? What are we waiting for here? I mean, how many times are we going to give chances? You gave Mike McDaniel and his staff a chance after Tyreek Hill quit on you. Let's be honest, you turn around and gave him another chance after that embarrassing Week 1 blowout to the Indianapolis Colts. How many chances are we going to give him? And then you lose close games to the Patriots and the Bills. You beat the Jets, and then you come back and you drop a dud and blow a 17-point lead to the Carolina Panthers. How many chances are we going to keep giving here? It goes back to the article just mentioned it. I mentioned it when it was said a couple days ago. Okay, Stephen Ross is apparently really frustrated. So what now? What is your grand plan to fix this? And why aren't you allowing the frustration to drive you to make change? That makes no sense. Now, he goes on to say, because he says tensions are boiling over after the loss to the Panthers. I mean, why are we even allowing this song and dance, this clown show to continue? I mean, again, let's say you lose the next 2 or 3 games. Now you're 1-6 or 1-7. What did you prove? Now you're giving the interim head coach you're going to name, whether it be Bevel or Anthony Weaver or whoever, you're giving them half the season when you could have given them actually a lot more. See, that's the thing. Even if you would have made the change after week 1, let's say, would it have looked rash? Maybe some may have painted it as rash, but it wouldn't have been rash to us Dolphin fans. That's number 1. Number 2, at least you would have given the interim head coach almost a full season, and you would have had almost a full year to see what you have. Now you're going to have half a season. What if this team gets a little momentum, gets a little oomph in their step because there's a big change and they start turning it around? But that is only a facade, and next year they're back to their old ways. You could have given this a full season to play out almost. But instead, waiting 2 more, 3 more weeks, you're going to be halfway through the season. What's the point at that point? You might as well just keep tanking for the draft pick. Like, seriously, what is the point at that point? You might as well just go for the draft pick. Now, the other thing in here, sources told Tony Pauline that they do not think it's a definite that both the head coach and the general manager would be fired at the same time. I mean, again, what's the point? What's the point in keeping Chris Grier if you're going to fire Mike McDaniel? Even if it's an interim head coach, you're going to give this guy a shot at a 4th head coach? That's your grand plan? Like, it would be just so Dolphins and Stephen Ross to give Chris Grier, who has never led this team to a playoff win as a GM, his 4th head coach. I mean, we are now getting into unprecedented territory. How many unsuccessful general managers in all of sports, not just football, get a shot at a second or third head coach during their tenure without a playoff win, let alone potentially a fourth? If you are going to go ahead and make changes, they need to be sweeping from the front office down to the sideline and right onto the field. I've said this. I love the fact that Ross keeps his checkbook open, but the fact of the matter may be that this team may be better off when Ross is no longer in charge, because when it comes to making football decisions and putting the right people in charge to make football decisions, Ross has failed miserably as an owner. He's failed his franchise and he's failed his fan base. You got Marvin Allen in the building. Well, why do you need to keep Chris Grier if you get rid of Mike McDaniel? Get rid of them both. Again, I don't care if it's an interim head coach. How does this guy get a chance to work with a fourth head coach? That is absolute ludicrous. That's insanity. That's embarrassing. Like, I'll tell you this much. If they fire McDaniel, but turn around and keep Chris Grier, I am going to be telling people, do not go to the games, do not buy the merchandise, boycott this. This is insanity. And I know what's going to happen too. And then we're going to do that, and then they're going to fire Chris Grier, and you know what their grand plan is going to be? I've been saying it for like 2 years now. Their grand plan is going to be, let's make Brandon Shore the general manager. That's what they're going to do. They're going to hire from the inside, a la the Steelers and Khan. Omar Khan. That's what they're going to do. They're going to, I'm telling you right now, get ready for it. I've been saying this for like 2 years now. I know I've been saying this since last year when we were 2-6 and 2-4. I was telling all y'all, get ready because it's going to be Brandon Shore. I've been saying this for almost 2 years now. And we'll be right back in the same cycle. All because Ross can't put his big boy pants on and is afraid of change and blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I've seen people suggest, well, maybe Tom Garfinkel, should get in. Garfinkel should have nothing to do with trying to find a football mind. Garfinkel needs to stick to the F1 and all that other hard rock BS. When it comes to football decisions in the team, Garfinkel is not a football mind. Keep him away from it. Start putting football minds in charge of football decisions. Stop having guys who you just like how they handle your money or how they get outside endeavors that make you money from football. Stop letting these people be involved in football. The reason why Chris Grier is safe right now is, yes, we all pretty much assume it's because he knows what in the Flores issue. But let's go deeper than that. We've talked about this on this channel. Garfinkel has been a protector of Chris Grier. He has already let his personal relationships get in the way of what's best for this team. To me, that shows you aren't putting the team first. You got to go. The only person at the top there, if I was Stephen Ross, I would be asking and picking the mind up for football decisions is Dan Marino. All right? So, that's what I got to say about that. Now, let's get into the whole head coach thing of this. So, sources telling Tony Pauline that they expect the owner to target a disciplinarian type of head coach with experience in the league, someone in the Dan Quinn mold. And one name that's being speculated as a possibility Mike McDaniel gets canned is ESPN analyst Rex Ryan. A few things here. Number one, what was interesting about this article too was when you read sources say that having a defensive-minded head coach would allow the Dolphins to bring in a big-name offensive coordinator who can work exclusively with Tua Tagovailoa. So right then and there, what are they telling us? What are they telling us? That they want a head coach who's going to bring an offensive coordinator in who's going to continue to work with Tua. So what are we doing here right now? Are we once again saying to a head coach, is this why Greer is getting held over too? So you guys can say to a new head coaching candidate, hey man, you got to figure it out with Tua. You're going to really do this again? These aren't sweeping changes. You need the GM to come in and hire a new head coach. Then you need them to make the decision at quarterback. If they deem it, hey, let's continue on with Tua, that's their decision. You can't be sitting there in these meetings and saying, well, you know, we like you and we really want you to be part of the next phase of the Miami Dolphins, but you got to keep this player, that player, this player, that player. You got to make them work. You remember, I said this back when they were looking for a new head coach and they ended up hiring Mike McDaniel. When I wanted Harbaugh back then, what did I say? Even back then, people will forget this because they'll claim I'm a Tua-neer and all this stuff. But back then, first of all, when Tua got hurt in 2022 in Mike McDaniel's first year, I said, go get Baker Mayfield. If he wins the job, he wins the job, so be it. But when we were looking for a head coach heading into that 2022 season, what was I saying? I'll give you an example. I wanted Harbaugh. I said, if you hire Harbaugh and he comes in and says, I don't want Tua as my quarterback, you roll with Harbaugh. That's your new head coach. That's your new investment. You follow what he says. So I was saying this 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And I'm going to keep saying, my stance hasn't changed. And since then, Tua has led the league in passing, led the league in completion percentage, led the league in passer rating, made a Pro Bowl. But the injuries have persisted, and we haven't seen him come up enough in big moments in recent memory. So, whatever the new coach and the new GM decide, they got my support just like they would have had it in 2022 if they would have gone a different direction. But you can't be doing this. Now, with Rex Ryan, see, I'm going to let you in on something, okay? All right? I know people want John Gruden. All right? This is why I don't want John Gruden. I'm afraid the game's passed him by. I also look at John Gruden. When did John Gruden win? Right? When John Gruden won 20 plus years ago with the Bucks, that was Tony Dungy's team. Tony Dungy built that team. So, why would I bring in a guy who hasn't proven to build a winner in 20 plus years? And let's be honest, his last tenure with the Raiders was a disaster. It was a disaster. So that's where I'm at with Gruden. Mike McCarthy. Right? Yeah, Mike McCarthy had winning seasons with Jerry Jones breathing down his neck. I get it. Mike McCarthy hasn't won since he had a top 10 defense and Aaron Rodgers to support that top 10 defense. That's when he won a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers had a top 10 defense and Aaron Rodgers was out of his mind. But what also sticks out about two names like this is this. Even though McCarthy is an offensive mind, I'm just using him as an example. You want a crazy stat? No head coach has won a Super Bowl as a head coach of two different franchises. So when you look at Gruden, when you look at McCarthy, they've already won their Super Bowls. Historically, the odds are against you that they're going to win another Super Bowl. You know? Yeah, I want Harbaugh from the Baltimore Ravens. But historically, it's not going to be on our side that we win a Super Bowl with Harbaugh. You know? That's why, like, I've mentioned a guy who, you know, Steve Spagnuolo is a guy I've mentioned. That's a defensive-minded head coach. He can pull from the organization over in Kansas City. But you need to find a guy like, and I'm just going to use this as an example. You need to find a guy like Andy Reid. Now, there's not a lot of Andy Reids out there. I'm not using the actual, like, quality of coach. I'm using the situation as the example. So what I mean by this would be like, remember Andy Reid just couldn't get over the hump, couldn't figure it out in Philadelphia. Then he had to go away, you know, figure it out, comes back as a Kansas City Chiefs head coach, and look, he's figured it out. That's what you need to find. You need to find someone like listen, I'd be down for Harbaugh. Everyone knows I've been preaching Harbaugh for months now on this channel if we were going to move off of McDaniel. So I'm down for Harbaugh, even though his history's against us. But you need someone that is getting a second chance, thinks they figured it out, and has that drive. You know? That to me is, you got to find that. I just don't know who that guy is right now. I just don't know. But, you know, I would listen, I've been saying this since last offseason. Spags, man, would be an interesting one, would be an interesting one for me. That would be a very interesting pull for me. 110%. So, but I mean, you know, there's some first time interesting guys, right? You know, Joe Brady would be interesting. You know, Kafka from the Giants would be interesting. I don't think you want to go down the Kingsbury or, but if you're going, like, there's more. You're not going to give Robert Saleh another chance as quick. Jesse Minter makes a lot of sense because of the Michigan connection. Are they going to go back to a guy like Vance Joseph? And then, if you're another first-time head coach, more of a defensive-minded guy, Chris Shula, continuing that lineage, right? But, then there's college coaches. Steve Sarkisian from Texas is definitely interesting, I think. Ryan Day from Ohio State is very interesting from what I think. But I think when you're looking for an active guys with backgrounds, it's really John Gruden and Mike McCarthy right now, and neither one of those move the needle for me. Like, I'm more interested in Joe Brady, Kafka, and Jesse Minter, and Chris Shula than I am those guys. Vance Joseph is another guy, like I mentioned earlier, that he has a coaching past. He has a past here in Miami. Would he have figured it out? I don't know. I don't think you want to go the Bill Belichick route 110%. No. Let me tell you this much. I'd rather go back to Nick Saban and forgive and forget everything that happened than go to Bill Belichick. So, you're not going to hire a guy like Deion Sanders. So, you look at this, and the first-time head coaches are more intriguing, right? Like, Brady's more intriguing. Kafka's more intriguing. Minter's more intriguing. Shula's more intriguing. Like, first-time head coaches, to me, are more intriguing than Gruden and Mike McCarthy. Gruden and Mike McCarthy, to me, aren't on Sean Payton's level. You're not getting that level of a head coach. So, and again, when you look at the history of things, that no coach has won a Super Bowl with one team has won a Super Bowl with another as the head coach, it kind of makes you wonder what's the point. So, now, really interesting article here, continuing on with this whole discussion from Barry Jackson about Stephen Ross. Check this out. A plea to Dolphins Ross to be proactive, how he must change and what he must do. There's no guidebook for being an NFL owner, no manual that would ensure that Stephen Ross's immense success as a businessman would translate to any kind of success as a steward of a football franchise. But if the Dolphins' beleaguered owner looks around, he can quickly identify the two areas where he must change for his franchise to escape a quarter century of mediocrity and irrelevance. 1. He must make better hires or find the people who will help him make better hires. None of his key hires have produced any kind of sustained success. Joe Philbin, Adam Gase, Brian Flores, Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, and Mike Tannenbaum, who made clear in his ESPN analyst role that he would have pushed for Justin Herbert over Tua Tagovailoa if Ross hadn't dumped him. He passed on hiring 2 interim coaches, Dan Campbell and Todd Bowles, who have had far more success than anyone he has hired. He couldn't land an interview with well-regarded Ravens GM Eric DeCosta because he reportedly wanted his new GM to keep Philbin. See, you're seeing the same pattern, and they're doing that nowadays. He wanted McDaniel to keep Boyer. You're seeing the same patterns, right? Here would be our suggestion to Ross. Find the smartest unemployed football man available and ask both him and the president, Tom Garfinkel, to do the legwork as a complete list of the best young front office executives in football, presenting Ross with qualified options to take over the Dolphins front office. See, why even involve Tom Garfinkel in this process? Tom Garfinkel's not a football mind. I don't need Tom Garfinkel sitting up there and pushing. I'm sorry, I don't. He's not a football guy. There's no need to conceal this from Greer. He understands how the business works, and he should know he's on borrowed time. Greer doesn't like it, he can quit. If Greer's okay with Roth authorizing a research on a GM successor, he can stick around until he's replaced. That way, if Ross finally masters his strength to move on from Greer, he will have a list of qualified replacements at his fingertips. 2. Ross must be less patient in trusting employees who haven't earned it. A quick history lesson. 3 years after Doug Peterson guided the Eagles to a Super Bowl title, owner Jeffrey Lurie had the gumption to make a coaching change after 9-7, 9-7, and 4-11-1 seasons. There has been more subsequent success with Nick Sirianni, even though Sirianni was in a rough spot in 2023. 5 years after winning their 6th Super Bowl together, Patriots owner Robert Kraft dumped Bill Belichick, then moved on from Gerard Mayo after 1 year, if only because Mike Vrabel became available. The Packers fired head coach Mike McCarthy, who won a Super Bowl, went 125-7-7, and won 10 of 18 playoff games, and replaced him with Matt LaFleur, who has gone 69-34 with 3 playoff wins. Even after Rick Spielman's teams made the postseason 6 times and won 3 playoff games in 10 years at GM, owner Ziggy Wilf, who has done a lot more winning than Ross, concluded that wasn't good enough and replaced Spielman with Kwesi Adefo-Mensah and replaced Mike Zimmer with Kevin O'Connell, giving the Vikings a coach-GM duo that has gone 37-21 in 3+ years together, albeit without any playoff success. How exactly does Ross have more patience with a 10-year general manager who hasn't won a single playoff game than Lurie had with a coach who won a Super Bowl and Kraft had with a coach who won more Super Bowls than anyone in history? Mike McDaniel said Monday that Ross was very frustrated after the loss to Carolina, but what good does frustration do if it doesn't translate into finding solutions? You can blame Greer for a million things, including spending his first round and second round picks on players rated by PFF as the worst at their positions. But do you know who has most to blame? The owner, who hasn't won a playoff game since buying majority interest in January 2009. The owner who should have never entrusted Greer with the 2025 draft and certainly shouldn't entrust him with another one. Did he not have enough evidence before last year, April's draft right here, that college player evaluation from Chris Greer was spotty? You know, did he not have enough? The evidence is there. Charles Harris over TJ Watt. Austin Jackson over Justin Jefferson. Noah Igbenogany over, of course, Jonathan Taylor. Cam Smith and Channing Tindall, Liam Eichenberg, and Josh Rosen, and picking too good a quarterback for the tank and failing to upgrade the trenches and messing up most of his draft day trades. Just not good enough, man. You know? Like, just not good enough. Absolutely painful. You know, I don't understand how he doesn't know that it's that spotty. You know, I just don't get that. Like, it's pretty impressive that he's just turning a blind eye. Was Ross simply not paying attention? Even the best talent evaluators make mistakes. Dave Dombrowski, who built one Marlins World Series champion and the nucleus of another and ranks amongst baseball's best GMs of the modern era, once traded a young prospect who had 3 big league wins for veteran pitcher Mark Langston. Johnson went on to 300 more games and winning those 300 more games and becoming a first ballot Hall of Famer. Jimmy Johnson, among the best talent evaluators to pass through these parts, traded down from 19 to 29 in the 1998 NFL Draft and selected running back bust John Avery at 29. With Greer, it's not simply that he's made some big mistakes, all GMs do. It's the large volume of mistakes combined with the gravity of the errors, combined with the totality of the mistakes, now surpassing the good moves he has made. Nobody's asking Ross to meddle, but like Lurie did in moving on from Peterson and Kraft has done in dumping Belichick, Ross must stop displaying internal patience and must be more adamant about demanding excellence. There's something to be said for continuity and stability in sports, as Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Heat and other successful organizations have shown, but there's nothing to be said for continuity when the results don't justify it. And that's it. The results don't justify it right now. We've gone how many years now without a playoff win? You know? Drafted Hunter Long when Quinn Miners was on the board. Traded up for Liam Eichenberg. Listen, I wanted Jonas Savaianaya, but he's not working with his coaching staff right now, and it's going to look even worse that you traded up for him. So, you know, you look at this situation right now, and it goes back. I mean, this is now the another person who's mentioned what McDaniel said about Ross being very frustrated. But what are you doing about that? You know? And it's 100. He's got to be. Why are you so patient in trusting employees that have done nothing for you? They've given you no return. That's what I don't get about being so patient after getting blown out about the Colts. You got embarrassed, brother. You got egg on your face. You went to bat for these guys. And this is how they repaid you with that performance in week 1. And again, couldn't land an interview with Eric DeCosta because you wanted your new GM to keep Philbin back in the day. And look at where, and DeCosta's having success in Baltimore, and we're still spinning our wheels. And you did the same thing with McDaniel when you wanted him to keep Boyer. You keep meddling. I don't know. I just, you know, it's so obvious for Ross to get involved, and it's so obvious in terms of the things Ross needs to do and needs to change. But he continues to show an ungodly amount of patience. I said this a couple days ago. He must be the best father ever. The patience he must have had for his kids as they were growing up must have been insane. It must have been super impressive. His kids must have got away with murder. Anyways. Let's get into some numbers regarding the offensive line. All right. Look at this. When you talk about true pass set grades right now, the Miami Dolphins are 31st in the NFL. 31st in the NFL. Our true pass set grade at guard is the worst in the NFL. By like a wide margin. The next closest team to us on the interior is at a 35 and we're at a 12. When you look at the center right now, actually being graded out as one of the lower centers in the NFL, tied with the Jets, only the Ravens, the Rams, the Bucks, the Panthers, and the Raiders are worse. At tackle, a 56. I mean, that's not much to write home about either. At all. Only 9 teams with worse grades at tackle right now than the Miami Dolphins in true pass set grading. You know, when we talk about it every year, this team is only going to go as far as the offensive line takes them, and they're just not taking them anywhere right now. That's all there is to it. And then you look at some moves here. The Miami Dolphins, they've signed Jordan Colbert to the active roster off the practice squad, and they placed Cornell Armstrong on the injured reserve list. They also signed Kendall Sheffield to the practice squad. So there you go. Kendall Sheffield is probably going to be a game day elevation for the next 3 weeks. That's what that tells me. That is your nickel right now, probably. I know Minka can move up. He can play a little in the nickel if you need him to. He's been vocal and said that he's willing to play in the nickel if they need him to. So, you know, that's going to be your game day elevation, though, Sheffield. 110%. Here it comes. Get ready. What's crazy is, like, for such a weak position in terms of how this roster was constructed, I mean, the Miami Dolphins have been made to pay for weakly constructing that position with massive injuries. I mean, Kader Kohou, who's never missed serious time, injured, missing the season. So, yeah, get ready for Kendall Sheffield to be elevated on game days. 110%. Get ready for that. It's coming. Guys, smash the like button. If you're new, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. I'll be live tomorrow with Neil Driscoll around 5 o'clock. So be on the lookout for that show. And until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. We'll see y'all in the next one. Until then, have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, whenever you're watching this. I'll see you on the next one. Fins up.